All right, my next guest is Ward Clayton. He is producer for Loopers, the Caddies Long Walk documentary. You saw Bill Murray, so many good ones there. He's also the author of Legendary Caddies of Augusta National, which is a fun book, came out last year. A lot to inside stories kind of on Augusta National's caddies. Ward, how's it going, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm secure in my house here in late October, and you're bearing the weather there where you are. So that's good on you.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to be outdoors and soak it in before the time change. So, I do want to get into some of these caddies that you have in your book. And when people think about Carl Jackson, just for example, 39 times he looped for Ben Crenshaw. And, they were synonymous with the Masters, those two, winning twice for Crenshaw. What did he mean for Gentle Ben, do you feel?
Anytime Ben mentioned Carl, he mentioned the word friend before he mentioned the word caddy. So I think that it was a relationship where they had the same kind of brain in order to track their way around Augusta National. Ben indicated few years ago that one of the things that Carl did was he would, when they were doing a practice round, he said, "Okay, let's go over here beside a green. Let's hit a couple of chip shots from here because you never can tell when you're going to when you're going to encounter this chip shot." And Ben said he never even thought about that. So it was an indication that Carl knew the landscape at Augusta National so intensely, but also it gave Ben the freedom to feel like he knew the course just as well because Carl was sort of giving him a lot of insight.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny that some of the little insights that caddies can give, and as you've gotten to know caddies over the years, connected to Augusta National, you've mentioned Steve Kling as one who he hosts Teddy Scott, Scheffler's caddy when during the week of the tournament. There's just so many little nuances that can be passed on between those two. What do you make of kind of that connection between Scott and Kling?
I think it's pretty smart on Ted's behalf because he's basically got a scout inside the fences at Augusta National to tell him what this tee box has changed. This green's been added on to things of that nature. And then Ted's staying with him during the course of the week, so he gets that insight on a daily or nightly basis to sort of go at the golf course every day. So that is smart on Ted's behalf, as I mentioned. But Steve Kling has worked with Dustin Johnson, some other players too. So the rule at Augusta National is when you're a player in the Masters, you can play a practice round before Masters Week. You cannot have your own caddy. You got to use an Augusta caddy, but your caddy can tag along and sort of take notes and pick the brain of the caddy and so forth like that. So I think that gave him a lot of insight before he even got there. So that's smart on both of their parts. Steve's a great guy. Steve was a baseball coach at college baseball and was waiting for the
Yeah.
opportunity to become a head coach at a major college in college baseball, but it never came about. And so his wife took a job with the Peach Belt Athletic Conference, which is a Division II conference, which is based in Augusta. And so Steve went there with him, started playing golf, and started asking people, "Hey, what can I do to play Augusta National?" And so, well, you can caddy out there. Well, how do you do that? And so, you never know till you ask. And he became a caddy
Mm.
out there. And so here he is being one of the more respected guys out there, sort of giving insight to tour players.
Hmm. Well, that's funny. You talk about resilience. I'm hearing a story of resilience with Steve as he pursued Augusta. For you, in your reporting for this book, was there a moments of resilience that you were able to really kind of dig into that you felt, wow, this was fulfilling, that I was able to come through on this particular stone I was able to unturn?
I think there's a lot of examples of that because this was like a where's Waldo kind of thing sometimes because some of these caddies are no longer with us or when I was researching the book. And so I had to go through family and friends and try to cut through some of the stories you hear, whether that was actually true or not. And you mentioned the word stone. Probably the coolest, well, I don't think probably, definitely the coolest thing we did was we were able to help fund a marker for Nathaniel Ironman Avery, who was Arnold Palmer's caddy. 32 years he was buried in a cemetery in downtown Augusta and did not have a marker. And we were able to, number one, identify the fact that there was a body buried in this particular place. It was only determined by a number at the office of the cemetery, and we were able to get a marker put in place with a donation for Ironman Avery, which I think is really cool to have him. You know, I've been by there every year going to Augusta, and somebody's teed up a golf ball or something like that at the marker. So that's pretty neat that he gets that recognition years
Oh
and years
yeah.
after he died. So,
Well, speaking of recognition, for you to shed light and give recognition to a lot of these kind of lost names, a lot of times starting out, you just knew the nicknames of these guys, and you had to really work through the research to bring these guys to light. But to give these guys recognition, how does it make you feel through that hard work?
well, that's a great reward. Um, um, when I was working at the Augusta Chronicle, we would do so many historic stories, and the caddy's name was either A, not mentioned, or B, just by nickname, as you referred to. So I was curious about who they were behind that nickname. Who were these people really? And that was enlightening to find out. You know, they were a part of the community. They were real people. They just weren't some Iron Man. You know, you think of all the superheroes and so forth like that. But he was Iron Man was before the Iron Man in the comic books even came to fore. So it was really neat to learn about his background and how his family was so entrenched in both Augusta Country Club and Augusta National. His great nephew, William Avery, who played point guard at Duke for a couple of years in basketball, went back to Duke and got his degree, was able to be an assistant coach at Duke. So a lot of intrigue about that whole family. And that's just one example. There's a lot of them where somebody's nickname that somebody didn't know their real names. Even the players that they caddied for didn't know their real names. They just knew them by their nickname. So it was really, really, really cool to reveal the fact of who they actually were.
Mm. No, that's great to hear that. And you just talked about former sports editor at the Augusta Chronicle, 91 to 2000. You played the course, I've heard in previous interviews, you played Augusta National 10 times during that tenure there as sports editor, obviously for the local paper. I'm just curious, how would you paint a picture for golf fans of what it's like to be at Amen Corner?
There's no fans when we're there, thankfully. um, I'll give you my synopsis of the golf course. It's one of the easier golf courses you'll play from the tee to like within 150 yards of the green. No rough, fairways are wide. It's somewhat pretty simple, except for the hills you got to walk up and down. But from 150 yards to get in the hole, it's one of the more difficult courses to play, just because the greens are so exacting. They got a lot of undulations to them, so it's really, really an unusual golf course. Is you feel like you can drive it anywhere, but if you're on the wrong side and at the wrong angle, you pretty quickly find out that you're going to have a difficult approach shot. So Amen Corner um, is unique even when there's nobody there, because you go across Rays Creek and you're at 12 green and 13 tee, and you're sort of set aside from everything. There's
Mm.
nothing back there except for woods, and you're sort of hidden. And when you play that in the Masters, even though I never played the Masters, it's the same way. The gallery is way back. If you'll notice and look at old clips of Masters, when somebody birdies 12, there's almost a pause because the fans are 160, 175 yards back behind the tee, and they can't see the ball go in until it actually is already gone in the hole. So there's not a lot of anticipation. So if players who have played in that tournament coming down the stretch in contention contend that's almost an eerie situation, because you're on 12 green, you go back to 13 tee back in that chute, which is even longer now, and you're back
Crazy.
by yourself. And it's almost, you can hear as Ben Crenshaw says, you can hear your heartbeat when you're standing back there. So it's pretty neat place.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting when you think about players under pressure. I always like to talk about what is it like to deal with Sunday pressure. I asked Sebastian Munoz this year, how does he deal with it? He says he takes some breaths, as you're talking about, takes some breaths, and he looks in and he soaks in nature, and that helps him get centered. My question to you, for golf patrons that ever get to Augusta, or maybe they've never been there yet, what places on Augusta's on the property are really good to kind of soak in nature, soak in the course? I always like behind 7 green, so many holes you can see from there. But to you, what stands out?
The thing I always tell people, you don't have to be a golf fan to enjoy your trip there. It's like going into an arboretum or going into I don't know what, a nature preserve. It's cool. You could just have a great day. If you don't know any of the golfers, if you don't know any of the history of the place, it's a cool place to visit. And you cited the place. It's behind the 7th green. That's my favorite place. Behind 7 green is on a little hill. There's a double scoreboard behind you. You can see 2 green, 3 tee, coming back up 7. You can flip back around and go over to 8. So that's a great location. Everybody wants to go to Amen Corner. Everybody wants to go to 13. People want to stand around the first tee or the 18th green, but 7 is a cool place to be. I agree. So I like your idea. Let's go to 7. Yep.
Let's do it. Yeah. Well, it's funny too. I think the times we're able to cover the Masters. I know you've been to so many over the years with PGAtour.com and now in charge of Masters Digital there. Um, I'm curious, there's so many stolen moments that we have. I call it stolen moments. Me and Alan Shipnuck like that term, just like you have every interaction we have matters, whether it's with a dad of a player or whether you're walking, you run in, you grab a sandwich next to Bob Herrig in the press center. All these little interactions, to me, they matter. And even I think in number 7, I talked with Graham McDowell's father, Kenny McDowell, and we just had a great chat 7-8 years ago just about how proud he was of his son to be at Augusta every year. He just can't wipe the smile off his face. So I'm just curious for you, what are a couple moments over the years, interactions that really stand out with people at Augusta?
I'm a big quotes guy, Garrett. In the '90s, there was a guy who was pretty outspoken, pretty interesting character named Fulton Allen, South Africa. Very, talked a lot. It was a great quote. And somebody asked Fulton Allen, "What's the key to winning the Masters?" He says, "Well, everybody, when they come down Magnolia Lane, their hair stands on end, and whoever combs their hair the best wins the Masters." And I said, "Wow,
I like that.
that's pretty deep." But yeah, so I think the cool thing is and you're right, you're spot on. Is the player a lot of times is trying to be so focused on the actual golf tournament, his family members and friends who are there are able to give some perspective on the player, but also their personal perspective on what it's like to be there. How much stuff they bought in the golf shop, what kind of sandwiches they ate, a lot of them are there to see their son or brother or whatever play in the golf tournament. But boy, first, they're not leaving when he's done playing. They're going to go shop. They're going to go see some other aspect of the golf course, whatever like that. So it's like going to Disney World or something like that. So it's pretty cool for all these family members, and they will give writers some perspective that they will not expect.
So in 2018, I remember Tony Finau's dad was talking to a number of us writers gathered together under the tree, the big oak. And he was just saying at the very end, he was getting emotional, crying, and saying that, well, this is a beautiful country. My son gets to play his first Masters, and I just love that we've made it this far. His grandfather coming over from Samoa. And you know what I mean? Like, he was able to look at the perspective of what this meant. You know what I mean? Kind of step out the 30,000 view perspective.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I think every player has family members or friends or whatever who are there for the first time, and they're just aghast at what the place is like. and you get a story unto itself of that nature. It's there's so many of those instances to cite. I know that last year we did a story on an old friend of mine named David Chapman, who caddy for Palmer in his first time as an honorary starter. And David's first time at the Masters was 1971 when he was 9 years old. And he walks onto the golf course, and a Japanese player holes out his second shot on the first green. He's been there 5 minutes. He's walk up behind the first green and holds his second shot on the first hole, walks off the green, and David says, "Hey, can I have your golf ball?" Guy gives him his golf ball on the first hole. David still got the golf ball, 54 years later. So it's what a first experience that was.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. I think about also friends who we've seen at the Masters who are no longer with us, and I think about Jeff Babineau, who passed away, a friend of ours that passed away in December of last year. What are ways, there's a deeper question here, but what are ways we can honor some of our friends? You know what I mean? Like, remember them properly.
Oh, you just by going to the tournament and writing about it, because that was their passion also. I think of my old pal John Feinstein. I'm a North Carolina Tar Heel, and Fine was a Dookie. So we were always jabbering about college basketball at the Masters, and people were sort of befuddled while we were talking about college basketball. But Fine really loved going to that tournament because it gave you an opportunity to write about a really cool venue. Cameron Indoor Stadium, Augusta National have a lot of parallels, and so he really relished the opportunity to be there and write about some of these golfers and family members. That was his forte anyway, Garrett. As you know, Fine was always finding people that were in the inner circle of players who would give some perspective. That's why he did so well with Season on the Brink with the Bobby Knight book, is because he got inside the game. It's like he did with golf with a good walk spoiled. So so I think of instances like that. Just as storytelling is a great way to pay tribute to a lot of these people.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. We know that was their passion. This is a great way to honor them as well. I think for golf enthusiasts at home that maybe haven't yet been to Augusta National, what day stands out? If you had to pick a day that, this is the best day to go, if you just had one to go to me, I always think that Wednesday's the best day because to me, Jack Nicklaus's Masters are numbered. Clearly, Gary Player at 90. To guarantee that you're going to see those guys, you're going to see the players laid back in the par 3 contest. You know what I mean? And you're still going to get on the big course in the morning. There's just so much. It's like living history day to me, what you get out of Wednesday. That's my opinion. I'm curious your opinion.
I'm the exact opposite, Garrett. I think Wednesday's overblown.
Okay.
Because if you're there one day, you get half a day practically to see some of these guys play the regular golf course. And then you got to go to the par 3 course, which can be pretty cramped, pretty smaller space. And you can't, they shut down the regular golf course in the afternoon, so you can't walk around the grounds. So if you're going to a practice round, I think Tuesday's a great day because everybody's there on Tuesday practically, and the golf course is open all day long. Or going Thursday or Friday, because Thursday or Friday, everybody's playing. You haven't made the cut yet. So half of your goal, I would think, is number one, see player X play. You can do that Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. Or, either one of those days, you can just go walk around the golf course. I think a lot of people need to realize you're not there to see player X or player Y or player Z. You're there to see the golf course itself. You can see player X, Y, and Z at whatever PGA Tour event you're on.
Bay Hill, some of those, yeah.
So seeing the golf course, I know people have this unusual routine of walking the golf course backwards.
Yeah.
They'll go 18, 17, all the way back like that because they think they can see the golf course better that way. So I'm always liking the fact that I'm going to walk the front nine because the front nine, even though television is expanded dramatically, the front nine doesn't get the exposure that it should because it's really, your legs will be burning after walking whatever nine because it's a pretty difficult walk.
Yeah, and also just how steep number two is, and just going down the hill, just what a beautiful view that is. And then even looking back from the green up the hill, there's just so much to soak in that part.
Oh, I agree. It's Amen corner is 11, 12, and 13. The other corner is 4, 5, and 6. If you think about it, you go over there. 4 is a terrifically difficult long par 3. 5 is a terrifically difficult long par 5. And then 6 is the bizarre par 3 where people hit over the heads of spectators. So that's really a cool little corner to go around there. The fifth hole is probably the least visited hole at Augusta National because it's so far away from the clubhouse, and you have to make a trip to get there. So
Hmm.
I enjoy walking the front nine.
Yeah, there's so much to see, and I'm thinking too, like there's a lot of caddies you've seen. I know there's Augusta National caddies, but like Joe LaCava, and you watch, Joe Scovrin, and some of these guys that have caddied over the years. There, we've mentioned Teddy Scott, and what do you think they do so well with their guys who've won, past champion, caddies that played for or that caddy for winners?
They manage their players' emotions. I'll never forget in 2022. This, you probably know this story. Sunday morning, Scotty Scheffler is in tears at his house because he's thinking the moment is too big for him. He's thinking that he's not sure he's prepared to play the final round of the Masters. Well, you get to the first tee, and Ted Scott and Scotty Scheffler both are men of great faith. And they get to the first tee, and Scotty's probably pretty daggone nervous on the first tee. And Ted opens up his jumpsuit, and he's wearing a T-shirt that says "God's in charge," and that put Scotty at ease. He almost laughed about it because it was just putting him in a different frame of mind. So I think a lot of the great caddies, a lot of caddies know how to do yardages and know how to read greens. Things that green reading is very important at Augusta National. But more so than anything, if Garrett, if you're on the first tee and you're about ready to pee in your pants because you're so nervous, they're going to tell you a joke and make you be a little more at ease. Where if you get on the first tee and you're really cocky, you're going to break you down, and they can read the how a player's feeling almost immediately. They
Mm.
know, one guy, the same guy one day could be really tense, the next day could be really cocky. So you got to be able to adjust and help that player along mentally. So I think
Mm.
that's the biggest success with a lot of those guys is telling how a player's acting and how to interact with them.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned that in your book as well. Just like these amateur psychologists, they're
Oh
able to
gosh.
read. Bernard Langer's told me many times that they're a confidant. You got to be so good at hearing and knowing how to deal with the information, the way that the player speaks to you. You've got to be able to be someone that they can trust overall.
Oh, no doubt. And the caddy's got to be the Teflon man too, because if a guy's playing bad, his job's on the line. If a guy's playing good, all of a sudden the player's taking all the credit for
He
playing great, and the caddy's not doing anything. So it's you got to be ready to go to another player at some point in time. That's been happening more frequently over the last few years there on the PGA Tour itself.
Well, speaking of caddies, again, I know that you were able to get Bill Murray involved with Loopers as a producer of the show. I'm curious, what was that process like? Because I know in the past you mentioned he's got a 1-800 number and he's got a lawyer, doesn't have a manager. So how do you how do you get Bill Murray?
He does not. We had a great story about how that finally came to fore. We were basically done with that film, and at the 11th hour, finally Murray responded and said, "Yeah, I'll do the voiceover for you, but you got to come you got to bring your crew from L.A. to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where he lives the majority of the year." And so they went into a studio and had this tug of war for about 2 to 3 hours where Bill wanted, I don't think this line works. I want to change it to this or whatever like that. And there was an explanation. Hey, we're done with this film. We're trying to marry the narration to the film. And so there was a big tug of war. So they got done with that and they were happy with what result was. And Bill's got driving a convertible Mustang with his dog in the back. And he tells a couple of the crew members, "Hey, why don't you guys hop in the car with me? I'm going to tour you around Charleston." So they got in the back seat and rode around Charleston for about 30 minutes. And Bill said, "Oh, here's so and so, here's so and so." And they got downtown, Garrett, and they came to a stoplight. And Bill clammed up. And one of the guys said, "What's the problem?" And Bill said, "Well, I got to be at so and so in 15 minutes." And he dropped them off on the street corner and left, just left them there.
Wow.
And they had to call an Uber and Uber back to where they were to get their equipment so they could fly home. So typical Bill Murray, it sounds like, where you go from 1 minute where he's showing you around, next thing you know, he's like booting you out of the car. So it was pretty interesting.
Oh man, so many versions of the man. It's hard to track
Yeah,
him down.
yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, Ward Clayton, always appreciate the time. Thanks for visiting with me here for a bit.
You're welcome, man. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Take care.